Welcome to Osei Nation with Marilynn Stark. This is Marilynn. Please like this video if you would, and also comment and subscribe if you have any questions or observations. Let us begin. Jolani, the new leader of Syria, how he sees success. World leaders enter talks with Jolani. Syrian rebels are disavowing the will to make threats. Question: is it right for the outside world to give Jolani a chance? Jolani has roots fighting for Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, and now, alongside his sartorial transformation, he has pledged to protect minorities and extend inclusion to Kurds, for Jolani has recently donned a business suit minus his white turban. He has left military fatigues. Nations who have extended a hand to rebuild Syria after its devastation by civil war are Jordan, Qatar, the United States, Turkey, and the Druze. Qatar will invest in Syria's energy industry. The U.S. meeting with Jolani was productive in that Jolani promised to drive terrorist groups out of Syria, and that prompted the U.S. chosen delegate, Leaf, to lift the $10 million bounty on Jolani. Jolani's hosted foreign minister from Turkey wants to lift sanctions and wants to see immediate and efficient rebuilding of Syria. On December 23rd, Jolani met with a Druze leader from Lebanon. Druze is an Arab minority that has an old religion which practices in isolation to any newcomers, disallowing converts. Sociopolitically, the Druze also extend that total exclusionary rule such that newcomers aren't welcome to join their communities to live. This results in a political identity for the Druze that is sure and unchanging to outside influence. The Druze live in Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan. Message from Jolani to all minorities by his cordial meeting with the Druze leader: minorities will be safe in Syria. Syria's leading attributes include generous energy reserves. It also is located geographically next to Israel, and Israel is the kingpin of democracy in the area. Syria further occupies a place en route to Europe from the Persian Gulf oil-rich countries via pipelines for energy transport and/or shipping by the Mediterranean Sea. And finally, Syria enjoys a new status as the nation where a brutal autocratic tyrant, Assad, was ousted alongside his autocratic ally, Putin. Jolani himself, as leader of HTS, who overthrew, essentially, the dictator Assad, now occupies a new seat of de facto authority in Syria. Diplomacy with the West is unfolding in a matter of 2 weeks from the overthrow of Assad, including interviews with CNN and BBC. Jolani is presenting a new and, of course, amicable image to the world in a purposeful state of mind that projects an interest of good accord and hopefully from a nation seeking peace after war. He speaks with journalists in his office, stating the needs of Syria to rest after war and to seek strength and grow under prosperity. Jolani also manifests and speaks a mind for peace towards all nations in the world. His welcome is to not only the Kurds, a U.S.-backed minority controlling land in the northeast, but it's also extended to all minorities in Syria. In the last decade, the rebels and Kurds were up in arms one to the other. Jolani is now asking the Kurds to be peaceful and join instead the peace talks, thus joining the newly state-born efforts to rebuild Syria. This kind of leadership on the part of Jolani is most pleasing to what the outer world both needs to hear and wants to hear. The question remains, will this spirit of a rebirth of the nation of Syria, with the guiding principles of unity, inclusion, and wealth building, eventually give the desired fruits of a new mind for leadership, as is clearly reflected, indeed, spoken out by Jolani? Jolani himself is seemingly reborn, and may draw from his successes in establishing a viable working system of governing in the city of Idlib and its governorate of the same name, located in Syria's northeast. There in Idlib, Jolani led well, setting up social services for the people, and the people had enough faith and trust in the governing system he set up in Idlib to pay taxes. Critics will say that to out of hand accept Jolani as the new leader of Syria should not be done at all. Rather, analysts should embrace a discriminating manner. Why? The answer is obvious. This is a man, Jolani, who had fought for Al-Qaeda indeed, who is or was a jihadist. In fact, al-Jolani, say, in 2015, was the emir of the Al-Nusrat Front, the Syrian branch of the Islamic State in Iraq. Now Jolani is offering a position of unity and peace as his platform of leadership in Syria. This can potentially make total sense since the violence of all rebels has been quietened by the exact overthrow of Assad. The problem ahead in the new and transitional government under Jolani's de facto leadership might lie in greed for wealth by various groups, once rebels themselves, that could overrule the unity found in peace among them. The oil wealth should be, by all plans and rights, used strategically by all Syrians to rebuild a prosperous economy for Syria. However, if the former fighting factions do not surrender to one leader while they eye the wealth from energy sources to be had, then, slipping back to the tool of violence, some level of disquieting uprisings could occur. Jolani, however, presents the picture of a person who can represent and stand for a more evolved mindset in the diverse entities that have been respectively revolting in Syria in the 13 years before the actual ouster of Assad. In a recent CNN interview, Jolani speaks of, quote, a unification of internal opinions and the establishment of institutional structures within the liberated areas of Syria, end of quote. He goes on to say, this institutionalization included the restructuring within military factions. They entered unified training camps and developed a sense of discipline. This discipline allowed them, with God's guidance, to engage in a battle in an organized manner. The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and an adherence to commands. They stop when they should stop, and they withdraw when they should withdraw. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order, both in civil and in institutional matters and in military operations alike, end of quote. Al-Jolani goes on to say that he prospectively sees not the Islamic rule of individuals or personal whims, but rather the establishment of institutions. Thus, when it comes to the concept of the word jihadist in the political sense of including the religious effort of an individual to know God and to live by God, but rendered now instead further onto a political platform of rulership, be it violence to achieve that goal, Jolani uses now instead the word institution. He does not now after the successful overthrow of Assad, have to talk specifically about the use of violence, except as to call others to surrender their arms. Syria deserves a governing system that is institutional, not one where a single ruler makes arbitrary decisions, says Jolani. Jolani clearly believes that the sects which constitute minorities can coexist with one another, saying that they have done so in this region for hundreds of years. He also states clearly that, quote, no one has the right to erase another group, unquote. Jolani actually prescribes a legal framework that, and I quote, protects and answers the rights of all, not a system that ensures only one sect as Assad's regime has done. End of quote. Jolani expresses in the CNN interview that HTS, his group, should perhaps dissolve as it performs its bounden task, to be the means, not an end, but a means to confront Assad's regime. He sees HTS as transitioning into a state of governance, institutions, and such. Jolani calls out to those who may brand him even yet as a terrorist. And he says, quote, don't judge by words, but by actions. I believe the reality speaks for itself. End of quote. Jolani says that he has not willfully killed thousands of people in his years as a fighter, nor has he destroyed homes and caused the displacement of millions, not personally. Yet, the regime itself is guilty of such actions. Thus, Jolani calls upon his own history to properly set himself up as a leader. In conclusion, therefore, one may see in Jolani a person who has evolved into the leadership role he now occupies. Perhaps the atrocities of the fighting in Iraq in earlier years he had witnessed and known, coupled with the sequential siege of Damascus from Hama to Homs to that capital city just recently, caused critics to continue to look askance at Jolani. That he overthrew an atrociously brutal dictator in different times, among the ancients, for instance, could even have been seen as heroic. However, on that point, what in the depth of things matters is that the Syrian people are free of Assad now. Perhaps they will adore the man, Jolani, who led skillfully and at the right time in the long saga of taking down Assad, and Jolani also succeeded in doing that. The leading point certainly touches upon the happiness of the Syrian people in that they no longer suffer the torture, the chemical warfare killing of innocent citizens, and the fear of being bombed on a frequent basis. If they realize the fruits of that happiness in being now finally liberated from such warring oppression as they have known, onlookers may not think that this will even last. Alas, if the Syrians give such continuing doom talk too much credence, too much thought, this may de-elevate them when they most need to be regrouping adequately in strong faith that they will gain back their nation from dictatorial rule. This problem is further complicated by the fact that the Middle East itself, where Syria is located, is filled with violent battles, wars springing up due to a heritage even of warring peoples. Thus, careful respect and diplomacy on the part of other nations, both neighbors and distant nations, could be a binding factor in Syria's ultimate success or failure in Jolani's takeover and now his future as a leader. Thank you. I look forward to the next podcast, and please do subscribe and comment if you'd like. Thank you.